What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. Glad you're here today because I've got a guest with a terrific story to tell us. He started off as an engineer and, in fact, worked for Bechtel, but not in engineering, in IT. Then he moved on to KPMG and learned how to sell consulting, which is a very interesting and integral part of his story. But this is his second company that he's founded. It's not a startup, it's 16 years in, and the company is called Egnyte. And I'm looking forward to hearing the story of Vineet. Vineet, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alice.
So, all right, let's talk about what Egnyte does today. What do you sell and who do you sell it to?
Egnyte provides a cloud-based content collaboration and content security governance product baked into a platform. And we pitch to what I define as mid-market, which from a semantic perspective is 100 employee to a 10,000 employee companies are sweet spot. Today, we have 22,000 customers, including out of that 140, which are way bigger than 10,000, but they inbounded to us, so the product has grown fairly well for them. But fundamentally, we have solved the problem of what seem like two orthogonal constructs. One is get content closest to what the end user needs to do, which is whichever device, whatever business application department. And at the same time, with growing content going into the cloud, of course, we are a SaaS solution, the concerns around content security governance have gone exponentially higher. So how do you maintain that control from IT, CISO, CDO perspective while not introducing friction for the end user and do it in a seamless way where it's one solution helping address the knowledge workers problem. So that is sort of our raison d'etre.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, I think especially for mid-market, companies need that ability to have things at people's fingertips without having to do a lot of work internally. They just don't have the people to make that all happen. And then the compliance is a huge issue as well, right? Because we've got to get this, all the data where it needs to be, all the documents where it needs to be, and we need to remain compliant during this whole time. And that is not an easy thing to do when you're trying to manage all of your content yourself.
Yeah, you just nailed the problem. So even though, as I indicated with reference to 140 large accounts, the product scales, the interesting thing is you always have to look for the product market fit where the sales and the marketing efficiency is the highest, where the sales cycle is the least expensive.
Right.
And so therefore, our pitch is not about the problems we are solving are unique. You can indeed solve those problems by taking a file system from, let's say, Microsoft with their baked in SharePoint Online and OneDrive. Then you can do content categorization, classification with products like Calibra, Big ID. You can do data access governance with companies like Varonis, and so on it goes. So the problem or the challenge is it's a toolkit versus turnkey approach. And turnkey is where you get everything pre-built into one product, which is what Egnyte does. And therefore, from a mid-market perspective, the time to value, uh, the total cost of ownership, and how easy it is to manage on an ongoing basis becomes a big part of your selling point, which is why I focus on mid-market.
Yeah, the how easy it is to manage piece really occurs to me because when you were saying, well, you could do this with Microsoft and OneDrive and then this and then that for the compliance, and who is gonna do all that right inside your company when you could have a turnkey solution. So I love it. All right, so I want to know how this company started. Why did you start it? How did you get this idea that this was even a need in the marketplace? So take us back 16 years. What were you doing right before you started this company with your co-founders? And why did you guys, how did you get the idea and why did you go ahead and start?
The problem statement we were looking into was companies had this physical file server within the firewalls. If you're a big company, file servers and data farm with a lot of direct or network attached storage. And the idea was, could we move this into a multi-tenanted hosted architecture. We didn't even know the word cloud at that time, being full transparency. So if you go into you know archive logs and look at our first website, it said on-demand file server was the product we came out with, and we realized within 6 months of our launch that this is what people are calling the cloud. So we replaced the word on-demand with cloud. That was the genesis of the company. And over time, even though this was an early stage where the word shadow IT was being used quite a bit, in the next 5 years, the acceleration of all the infrastructure you needed to manage and control your content, not just file servers, but if you're a large company, you had dedicated MPLS networks, you had WAN accelerators from the likes of Riverbed if you were replicating data across multiple sites, Microsoft DFS replication. So all of this hardware substrate got subsumed by a software piece, which is what Ignite became. And that came also with the convergence of this solution class becoming mainstream.
Yeah, so good timing. And that is something I think that we often overlook when we're starting a company. Is this the right time? And sometimes companies are struggling when they're starting up, and they, may think it's something else. It's the market, it's this, it's that, but it's just sometimes timing. And when you hit it at the right time, which it sounds like you absolutely did. All right. So you had just sold the other company, you had this idea. So you started formulating it. And when you were first out there trying to sell, did you have the product completely ready? Or were you just socializing it with some people that you thought might be interested in this idea? How did that begin?
So, as a matter of fact, given that all four of us came from a product/engineering background, um, it is a double-edged sword. We worked for on the product side for more than a year before we took anything out to the market. So we are very much grounded into the reality, sometimes to a fault. That's why I said it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, yeah.
So indeed, when the product came out, it was a fully baked product as of at that point. Of course, there's been a major evolution along with technology trends and this and that. But we were first and foremost, and even today, a very product-centric culture. So if you ask me what's the superpower of the company, without batting an eyelid, I would say it's fundamentally its product.
Very good, very good. And it's interesting always too when you come from the product focus. I think that could be a really good thing in some ways, because you're thinking about what does the customer need and how are they going to use it, right? Versus how am I going to sell it? And I think sometimes when we lead with how I'm going to sell it, we kind of get all twisted around, right? So we want to focus, of course, on what the customer needs. So you've got this fully baked product, and there's four of you. How did you decide who's going to go out and do the selling?
That was easy. There were two of us, including myself, who, in our prior backgrounds, in fact, my the co-founder Rajesh, we all worked at KPMG. So we were in this outbound selling motion or deploying projects for companies like KLA 10 Core, Quantum, Leapfrog, Cisco. So we had that customer facing aspect, whereas the other two guys were back engineering, the so-called, I joke with them, are nerds, are geeks.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there was a very easy division of labor to start with. Uh, but it was also interesting given that the challenge of scale presents itself fairly quickly if you build a good product. So Rajesh and I had multiple aliases, specifically on email. Sometimes I would be sales rep. Sometimes I would be a pre-sales person. Sometimes I would be a CS person, customer success. But I think most companies do that.
Yes, yes.
So we did the usual, and it was an interesting learning where the most important thing that we focused on was customer sat or customer satisfaction. We used to do NPSs very early, and that has been an enduring culture of our company today, where customer satisfaction is more important to me than just the revenue targets or dollar-based retention rate or gross churn. Of course, those things ultimately value the company much more, I would say, stringently. But a happy customer to me is absolutely the fundamental ask of everyone at Ignite.
I really, really appreciate that. I think that is absolutely the way to build a healthy, sustainable company that can continue to scale. I think that too many times we see companies with either venture or PE, private equity, throwing money at them and wanting them to just go out and grab new logos as fast as they can, not worrying about whether the customers are now happy and successful using what we've sold them, right? And so there's churn. And of course, in the end, that helps no one, right? So having that focus from the beginning, I think, is amazing. So when you were out getting your first customers, where did you go? How did you decide, all right, we're going to go to mid-market, we're going to go to certain verticals, or how did you start with, who are we going to approach that's going to really need this product?
In the initial stages, you're looking for validation. And while you have an idea, I would still call it's a half-baked idea, no matter how much analysis you've done.
Yeah.
So we started with just wanting to get customers, in full honesty. And the biggest customer acquisition funnel, in fact, the only funnel at that time was search engine marketing and search engine optimization, i.e., the web or digital. And I recall those days where spending $6,000 a month on SEM, SEO was a big amount for us. Um, and SEM, SEO today is still a big part of building the sales funnel or funnels, one of the funnels. And we spend in hundreds of thousands on that on a monthly basis. But that was the initial start at that time. Uh, and interestingly, from an industry perspective, at that time, we just wanted customers, so whoever would sign up. But over time, your inherent product strengths, they start manifesting organically into certain industries. And then you start understanding that why am I doing so well in, let's say, AEC, which is an acronym for architecture, engineering, construction, or financial services, and the product market fit, which was organic, then you capitalize by adding features and capabilities and tying with other third-party solutions which are focusing on that industry to go deeper, which is what we have done. So today, our three industries that are predominant for us are AEC, life sciences, which is emerging biotech, not big pharma, and financial services, which is regional banks, PE, wealth management firms, insurance firms of that sort within financial services. And the fourth one is media advertising.
And so that just sort of came to, like, as you were growing, right? You started going, wow, we actually are doing well with architects, engineers, and construction companies. Let's go get some more of those. Let's make a list of those and let's go approach them and say, hey, we're having real success in your industry. We'd like to bring that success to you as well. And it sounds like the other ones kind of fell out of that too, with the financial planning and life sciences. And so as you were doing that and starting to notice, wow, we're a really good fit over here. And like you said, you even started changing the product a bit to have features specific to those industries, which I think is just marvelous. And you were still doing all the selling with your partner at that time? Or did you start then to be like, wow, we have to scale this? We can't do everything. We can't run the company, do our other jobs, as well as go out and do all the selling. Where was that time, and how did it, occur to you guys, and what did you do next?
Actually, no. So building, I mean, this organic part of us doing it, me and Rajesh, only lasted for a few months. Uh, and then we quickly raised a Series A, which was within a year and 2 months. And that's when we started building our sales team, which was an inside sales team. And we are big fans of the inside sales model, especially when you're going after the low end of the market. Let's say up till 500 employee companies, you can do practically, or even up to 1,000 employee companies, you can do with inside sales. And we opened our first inside sales office of all places that most people don't even know where it's on the map, in Spokane, in Washington, state of Washington. And then
Yeah.
that was followed up. Today we have in Raleigh, we have in Draper, we have one office outside US in Reading, which is London. Well, it's outside London, but it's a 24-minute train ride from central London. And we have 420 people in sales, out of which 170 are quota carrying sellers. But inside sales was fundamental within 6 months of us trying to do it ourselves. Sorry, within a year of us doing it ourselves.
Yeah, no, and I think that's great. And so when you started that, now you had already had a company prior, so you probably had built a sales team up before. But how did you make that decision that we're not going to hire AEs that are on the road out there, because we're going after mid-market, like you said, up to a couple thousand employees. And so how did you make that decision to start inside sales? Had you had that model prior at your other company and it worked, or what were the factors that helped you decide that?
It was, it was a very direct correlation with the class of customers you're going after. So we had been very clear on day one that we won't go after the big enterprise, which I call as the big whale or the big elephant, pick your animal of choice. Simply because when we did the total available market size, the TAM analysis, and then what is serviceable, the SAM analysis, the mid market, which I define today as up to 10,000 employees, from 100 employees to 10,000, it was a massive multi-billion dollar market
Yeah.
opportunity,
Yeah.
just looking in the US. And then when you look at the sales cycles there, which can be depending on the segment of between 100 to 10,000, because 100 to 1,000 has a certain characteristic generally. 1,000 to 10,000 is slightly longer sales cycle. And even there, the initial land can be done in 4 to 6 months. So the cost of customer acquisition, i.e., the sales efficiency, is far better than chasing the big blue whales where the sales cycles
Yeah.
can be multi-years, multiple quarters, very expensive. Now, of course, if they result in something, you're looking at a high six-figure check or seven-figure check that all of us love. But I would rather build this high velocity, relatively low ARPA model and keep gunning the engine higher, which is what we have done. And that's where inside sales is a core go-to-market function. But of course, given that we're going into the larger swath of the market, we do have field sales organization, but that's more of an augmentation strategy. That is not a primary sales strategy.
Right. That makes sense. So, how do your inside sellers approach the market today? Do you have them working in geographic territories? Do they work in pods to approach customers? Tell us a little bit about how your inside sales actually works and does their job.
Sure. So, and of course, this is something that changes quite regularly in terms of not just the quota, but the territories that people have. Uh, and typically, in any SaaS company, and similar to Ignite, you have what you would call as the hunters and the farmers, meaning people who will go after new logos. There's a certain class versus people who will nurture and manage these accounts after the first year of customer acquisition. They're the farmers. And there's always a hybrid in between. You will find that there's a distinctive difference between the hunters and farmers on the extreme ends. And that shows up in their quota and their comp.
Yeah.
But in general, our entire sales strategy, especially on the direct side, because we do quite a bit with channel also, on the direct side, it is mapped typically based on geographic territory. And as we have some of these very, very large accounts or the strategics, there's account mapping also done based on the strategics themselves. And now we've gotten, now we're at scale. So we've become, I would say, a little bit more sophisticated. So we have dedicated reps for the industries we're going after.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
you have AEC reps. We have quite a number of AEC reps, actually. We have, uh, I'm trying to remember, 70 reps who focus on AEC, or 60 odd AEC. We have dedicated reps for financial services, dedicated reps for life sciences, and there's a horizontal. So this model, Alice, keeps maturing and you keep refining. And as territories get richer, you always have to recut the territories. And salespeople always crib about it because you're taking accounts away from them. But the TAM is getting bigger. So you have to create those slices and give it to other sales reps that you're bringing in. But that's a constant thing that every company has to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do like the specializing because I do think there are some nuances, right, to selling to AEC, right? They have their own peculiarities. They probably use the product a little differently than financial planners. And financial planners certainly have a higher level of compliance needs, than probably some of the other industries as well. And so I think it's great to have experts, subject matter experts as sellers, right? They know their industry really, really well. And they can, make sense when they're having a conversation. They can talk about the industry and they understand it. Plus, that they can leverage some of the other client relationships they have and talk about successes with companies in the same industry that they're trying to sell to. So those case studies become really important, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's good too, that you have the split. You're saying, well, we've got the hunters are out, go and get the new business, but then we've got the farmers who are keeping it. Do you also have any type of outbound strategy to set appointments, or do your inside salespeople set their own appointments?
No, no, we have a full-blown SDR, BDR machine. Uh, so when you look at the demand funnels, or rather the lead attribution, where it's coming from, obviously there is the marketing driven, which is a lot of it is digital, a lot of field marketing. We do quite a bit of field marketing now, especially events. Uh,
Nice.
then you have marketing influenced, but SDR managed. And then there's the sales reps themselves, which we call as sales direct, that they are building their own pipeline. Now, this is on the direct side. Uh, then there's the channel side of the business, which today is pretty significant for us at our scale. It's around 23% of our business is channel, and it's growing faster than the direct business because we are definitely investing in there. And the channel, which started with MSPs, is now more gravitating towards the VARs, the value-added resellers. Um, and some of them are fairly well-known names, like on the disty side, everyone talks about CDW, SHI, and people of that sort. But we're also finding some very healthy and rich um, traction with industry-specific VARs like USCAD, which focuses only on AEC, or the MSSPs, which is the extra S is for security, like GuidePoint and Optives of the world. So I feel very excited about that side of the business as well.
I think today having that blend of direct sales and channel sales is absolutely essential for growth. And you're seeing that firsthand, right? Yeah, we've got the channel and it's growing, and it may be even growing faster, right, than direct sales. And I think that is essential for anyone who's, especially any kind of SaaS, right? You're out there, you need a channel. So if you haven't built one yet, definitely something to consider. Okay, so you've got this, sounds like quite a big sales force, and it sounds like it's humming along beautifully, and your company's growing, and you've got this direct piece now that's really helping. Do you have channel managers for the channel? How are you doing that piece?
Yeah, 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 of course. Um, because you have the PAMs, which is the partner account managers. Then you have the whole channel organization, with including managers. And even on the channel side, we have cleaved it into MSP and the VARs
Okay.
because the motions are quite different. And especially with the VARs, the deals are much larger. So we are making a distinction there, and that's reflected in the org structure. Uh, and interestingly, what I find very exciting is that, let's say, if I hark back 5, maybe 6 years back, a lot of channel partners were still looking for from a perpetual license model where they could retire quota within the quarter. Whereas with the subscription model, it's an annuity. It's like constantly keeps giving. So to help them understand that, listen, if you sell so much of Ignite over 3 years, you'll make more money than if you were to sell a box in one quarter, was a very hard sell because it's like money's here and now. And you can't sit down with them and say, here's the present value of money with the current discount rate. It's like, who cares? It's math. But that model is completely deconstructed. And the leverage that you're seeing in the channel side, when they see this as a annuity or perpetuity, given if your LTV or lifetime value is, over 5 years, it's become very lucrative for the channel partners because they bring in the customers, and very rarely are they managing or providing frontline support. It's pretty much done to the vendor. So literally, it's like they bring you in, and after that, they kind of keep reaping the fruits of that tree without, I wouldn't say doing much, but it's like it's much easier. Like the farming comes very easily to them.
Yeah, yeah. That it's terrific, really. All right. So after all this time, you've built this, it's 16 years, you've built this amazing sales team that's helping your company grow, again, direct and channel, beautiful blend. What's your role in sales now as the CEO?
My role has become, obviously, depending on in the new business acquisition, I'm brought in not that often anymore because there's a growing maturity of our sales organization. But there are certain class of customers where you have to, and these are necessarily the larger ones where you have to build a surround sound. Um, and irrespective of the size of the company, sometimes uh, going and pressing the flesh and meeting
Yeah.
the head honchos. The title of a CEO does carry a lot of weight and gravitas, and people do appreciate that. But that's on the new logo side. I spend more time on relationship management, going and meeting existing customers. Uh, what I find very gratifying is there's so many large customers. Like these are CIOs of fairly well-known companies in the world that I have a direct line with that I can text them or they can text me. That's the relationship side. So I am constantly on the road meeting customers. And if there's a regime change, like a new CIO comes in an existing account, I have to go and meet them. Like I did last week, I was in Burbank. Next Wednesday, I'm doing a day trip to Chicago. Don't ask me why, just a day trip. Go in the morning, come back in the evening to meet a CIO of a customer that we have. It's a fairly well-known customer name. I spend more time doing that on the customer side of the house.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, I always say that the CEO will always have a role in sales, but that role changes as the company matures, right? And you get out of the day-to-day selling. And like you said, wow, gosh, I rarely get called in to, close a deal or help with a new deal anymore. They know how to do that. Our sales team has matured. And I love that. And we know that today it does take a team, and we need to have our sellers, our subject matter experts, and some senior people involved, depending on how large the deal is, right? And then the CEO can be brought in strategically as needed to give that CEO confidence. Like you said, meet them face to face and let them know who you are and what they're dealing with, and that this is a solid company with a CEO who has a vision, who cares about them, who cares enough to come out, right? And
Right.
say hello. And I think that's so important too with your existing customer base. It sounds like you're spending a lot of time doing that, which is really phenomenal because that's what keeps it sticking, right? I mean, there's a couple of pieces. One, you stated it earlier. We build this with the customer in mind. Successful customers are what we are focused on, right? And so, with that being the first piece, that builds a culture. We are all here to help our customers succeed. Every single one of you, right? That's your job. And then now here is the senior level supporting all of that in real time. It's like we walk our talk. We're supporting you, and here's our CEO to show you that. So I think that's a really important piece, and keeping that. I always say, like, we're not counting customers, we're counting successful customers. Can they use what we sold them successfully, right?
So, in fact, one advice I always give to our sales leaders or salespeople is imagine that uh, whether it's a prospect or you're trying to cross sell, upsell into an install based customer already, imagine if they could read your email communication internally about them, or
Yeah.
your hallway conversation or across the queue conversation. If they could hear or read it and you were not embarrassed about it,
Right.
that's what you should do. Because, see, look, everyone's got a quota to retire. The company
Right.
has a revenue target. I have my board mandate. Yes, we all have to make money. It's not a charity. But don't treat a customer like a bank that you have to constantly rob.
Right.
And that's hard. That's very hard. But if you want to be successful, uh, then it's if you don't have that mentality, it's a very short-term focused culture where you might get the renewal or something, but then the churn will happen for sure.
Absolutely. And yeah, I always say to people, if you have to complain about a customer, you should not have that customer. Why would you be complaining, right? If they're not a good fit, part ways gracefully. There's no reason to sit around and complain about a customer. But in a culture where we're not all focused on the customer, that kind of complaining can come in some other departments. And I've seen it before, right? Where these things happen. But with a go to market structure that we all are trying to put into place today, and some of us have beautifully built, everybody's focused on the customer and meeting that customer wherever they are in their journey, which doesn't end with a closed deal, right? It's long after the deal is closed. That customer's journey is still happening with you. And we have to touch them with marketing, with the humans, the account managers, the customer success, the support people. All of that is part of delighting them, making sure they're successful, and making them stay, right? Making them want to stay. So it's not a chore when the renewal time comes.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Well, gosh, great, journey that you've taken and you've built a tremendous business. Sounds like you've got good investors that are helping you grow and not putting too much pressure, I hope. But in these days, sometimes, the investors want a lot of crazy growth, but it sounds like you figured out how to do it very sustainably, which is really the way that it should be, right?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, for me, I take a lot of pride in building a company in the valley and kind of not do certain things which had become a norm, which is you raise around every 18 months, or the focus is top line growth at any or very high cost. And just to
Right.
put a fine print on it, we have only raised 137.5 million. The last time we raised was in November 18, when Goldman gave us $75 million, which is still a very large amount of money for me even today. And we don't have the need to raise any private financing. We have been cash flow positive with a growing EBITDA margin for the last few years. So it's kind of not a flashy company. It's not like a high flyer, but it's steady, durable business, and that shows in the financial metrics. Um, and one thing which I would say, and I've been as an American citizen now, I've been here for 30 years. The thing which I used to see was that desire, the human need for instant gratification, is paramount in a lot of cultures, including ours. And I do not subscribe to that. It's like, they say, stay patient, good things will happen. So even with customers, as you just yourself articulated, that if you nurture them, you treat them well, upsells will happen, cross sells will happen. Don't think for short term tactics. But it's always a hard balance because each rep has a quota they have to hit, and therefore they'll look for all different kind of things.
Yeah. But if we have it set up well and we support our salespeople well, then they're able to build those relationships and look at the long picture instead of just, oh my gosh, I have to hurry up and close this deal. Right. So it's nice when we can support them in that way. Yeah, of course they have quotas. They have to close deals. That's their job. But knowing that they're in it for the long haul. We want a customer for life, not just a customer for now, right?
Correct.
And it sounds like that is the culture that you have built.
Yeah, yeah. I hope, obviously the culture is a combination or culmination of different personalities, but the thing which, if I were to talk about our core values, which every company wants to talk about in terms of bringing in some marketing people, spend a couple of $1 million, we did none of that. So we talked about three things. One is fiscal prudence, which is fundamental. The other is what I call as candid conversation, which is brutal honesty.
Yes, yes.
And the third one is invested relationships, which means,
Mm,
and I'll be a liar to tell you that, oh, customers come first. No, no, no. Your employees come first. If you
right.
don't treat your employees right, if they're not happy, how would you have customers be happy?
Right. They won't treat their customers right.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that, we are a benevolent, wokish company where you get free haircuts and free car washes. None of that nonsense. We pay you well, you make your bonuses, all those different things. And in the end, it shows up in the customer satisfaction stats, whether it's NPS, customer stat, dollar-based retention rate, and this and that.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, just before we go, I have three questions that I want to ask you. And I think I hopefully you got a tip off ahead of time, but if you didn't, I'm sure you'll know because they're easy questions. So, first off, what is a book that you think every CEO should read?
Oh, this is one of my favorite. I keep shipping it to our customers. I've given it to a lot of people. Long time back, I read, remember Bill Walsh, the 49ers coach,
Yes, yes.
manager coach? So he wrote a book which was The Score Will Take Care of Itself. I wholeheartedly give that book, and I would say everyone should read it because the moral of the story there was when he started with the 49ers Santa Clara, and they were literally, not the team you think of them today, or
Right.
after he came on, they won 3 Super Bowl rings. He started by listening to, as he walked in, how does the receptionist pick up the phone and answer an incoming call? He didn't look at assistant coach, defensive coach, quarterback, whatever, right? He just looked at the first basic thing because it starts with the minutest of details. And the result was there for everyone to see for what they did. So my favorite book, which, I mean, there's so many other good books, but The Score Will Take Care of Itself, or it says The Score Takes Care of Itself, is the my favorite one.
Very good. I haven't read that, so I'm going to put that on my list. All right, next one is, what's a podcast you love because it makes you think differently? Maybe not even a business podcast, something you listen to.
So the challenge for me is time on when I listen to it, because you'll be laughing. I read still a lot of newspapers in broadsheet. Like I get the Wall Street Journal, I get the San Francisco Chronicle, I get the San Jose Merc,
Oh my
and
gosh.
then I get digital New York Times, Washington Post. I get all kind of stuff, Atlantic, whatever. But I do listen to the all-in-one podcast, and the other one which I've taken a liking to is HBR's IdeaCast. uh, they are in smaller bite-sized chunks, like 26 to 28 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's the one that I would say people should listen to. It's quite reasonable. All in one is great with Shamat and Dave Sachs and the other guy,
Yeah, it is
but it
good.
can be very long,
Yes.
and sometimes you just run out of time. And unless somebody tells you, listen from this point to this point, which nobody.
Right. No, I agree with you on that one. It is good, but you have to have enough time. So HBR IdeaCast.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So last question. What does every CEO need to know to win in this market?
I would say, without a doubt, uh, integrity. Like, you have to be honest. You should be, like, if you are, let's say, part of the sales cycle, don't bloviate. Don't uh, sell more than what your product does.
Yeah. Right.
The sincerity, the honesty goes a long way. Uh, it makes you more believable, more relatable. And sometimes, yeah, the path might seem longer, but doing things the right way, as a good human being, it'll last longer. uh, it'll be there.
Yeah.
So I would say people should think about being honest. And the other thing is, this Silicon Valley thing, that some revelation comes and it changes everything. I think that's not something I believe in. I think there's incremental improvement, but it should be consistent incremental improvement. You remember that book which was on that, The Power of Atomic Habits, where they
Yes. Yeah.
talk about 1% every day, and it computes to 343% over whatever, 1 year, if my math is right. I believe in the incremental side. It's like, no, keep improving it regularly, consistently, but do it with passion, but honesty. Like, honesty and integrity is, to me, the fundamental thing that everyone should think about as a CEO, or even if you're not a CEO.
Yeah. Well, I think when you do have that on your mind as a CEO and you practice that, it trickles out to everybody that you touch, right? Your home life, your family, your senior executives, everyone that works for you. You live that, they see it, they appreciate it, and then they can live it too.
Alice, you just said something very important. Uh, I believe there's no Jekyll and Hyde personality. You are what you are at work, at home, in every facet of your life.
Mhm.
And that genuine honesty, authenticity will reflect everywhere in what you do. Doesn't mean you won't make mistakes. I mean, I still do major screw ups, but it's like the joy of doing it in a way where you can look yourself in the mirror to say, yeah, I did it the right way. That's the thing that it's sometimes hard, because the path can be long.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you really are doing it the right way. And thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today, Vineet. I really appreciate you sharing your story and sharing some of your wisdom as well.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you for the opportunity.
If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.